Hi there, and welcome back to the channel. You've read the title, and I'll probably do more of these lists if I get any kind of viewership on them. I always tell people you shouldn't feel embarrassed to ask what a term means. We all had to learn at some point, and I still come across terms I haven't heard before. Some of these are terms that I probably learned years ago and I've forgotten them. Here's a list of 8 terms that can be handy as a musician no matter what instrument you play. It includes the following terms: MIDI, DAW, AES-EBU, ADAT, SPDIF, percussion versus drums, and I'm surprised how many people don't know the difference on this. Double tracking and Q, as in parametric EQ. First, number 1, MIDI, Musical Instrument Digital Interface. This is a standardized protocol for connecting hardware. Music hardware, that is. It was finalized in the early 80s and has been a standard in the industry for over 40 years. The original standard used 5-pin DIN connectors. However, USB MIDI and other connectors have been used by manufacturers. It allows devices of different types and from different manufacturers to be connected together so they can be used cooperatively. For example, keyboards, drum machines, sequencers, and computers. Despite being over 40 years old, MIDI has fared very well as a specification. Its transfer speed is only 31,250 baud, but it doesn't need to be particularly fast for most uses, and it's rare that you can't do with it what you want to do with it. Also, there are faster versions now with the use of USB connectivity. USB also has the advantage of only requiring one cable, but that won't interface with older and classic gear sometimes. Some manufacturers give you both USB and 5-pin DIN connectors. However, on budget gear you often only get one type, and mostly now it's USB. Some early implementations of MIDI were incorrectly specified and implemented. The most famous is the velocity range on the original Yamaha DX7. It limits the maximum velocity to about 100 when it should go all the way up to 127. Number 2, DAW, aka Digital Audio Workstation. DAW refers to software running on a general or specialized computing device. It allows a user to record, playback, and edit MIDI data, audio data, and it allows you to also have video running at the same time, all synchronized together. It is most often the hub of a studio recording environment. Typical DAWs include Cubase, Reaper, Logic, and Pro Tools. Number 3, SPDIF, aka Sony Philips Digital Interface. This is a consumer-level digital audio format that transmits a stereo signal over a single coax cable with RCA connectors, or a BNC cable or fiber optic cable. There's several implementations. It appeared on a lot of studio gear 30 plus years ago, but now not so much, and it's been largely replaced by ADAT light pipe. More on that in a moment. Number 4, AES-EBU. That's another acronym. Audio Engineering Society, European Broadcasting Union. This is the professional balanced version of SPDIF, so it's a digital audio format. Most often it uses 3-pin XLR connectors. You should use 110 ohm digital cables rather than common analog XLR cables to prevent signal issues. But most people opt for the cheaper analog cables like me, and they don't often give you any problems. Just know that they can, and if you're having problems, that's one thing to look at. Its digital format uses one cable to send 2 audio channels. Number 5, ADAT, also referred to as ADAT light pipe. A lot of people throw ADAT around like it's a word, and that's fine. But it is actually an acronym, and it refers to Alesis Digital Audio Tape. And I actually did a whole bunch of episodes on it because I used several ADAT units back in the 90s. I own 4 XT models. ADAT light pipe as a digital audio interface first appeared on Alesis digital tape recorders. It is an optical audio interface. The cool thing about it is that it can transmit 8 high-quality audio channels on a thin fiber optic cable. Using multiple channels at the same time, it's possible to have higher bit rates and higher sample rates than the original standard allowed for. And many companies have Frankensteined it to do that. It's a relatively inexpensive audio interface for 8 channels of digital audio, and this is why it appears on a lot of music equipment, especially digital audio interfaces. Also, like other digital formats I talked about, like AES EBU version 3, synchronization information is embedded in the data stream itself, and that's very handy. Number 6, percussion versus drums. And let me first say, I don't care if you use them interchangeably. I often do myself. A good way to think about this is, as I'm going to explain right now, and I'm going to put down the remote. All thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs. So let's put that into a musical term for you. All drums are percussion, but not all percussion are drums. So as an example, here's an egg, and that's obviously percussion, right? But I don't think anybody would call that a drum, even if you hit it with a stick. Same thing about a kielbasa. It's percussion, it's not a drum. So that's the way you should think about it. Number 7, double tracking. This is the process of recording the same instrument, vocal or otherwise, to a discrete track of a recording device and playing them back at the same time. So essentially the same performance. The inherent slight differences in timing and pitch can make the instrument sound bigger, richer, and more pleasant to the listener. It's easy to overdo it, but it's fun to do it. Generally, you want both performances to be tight, but not exact. In post, you can pan and otherwise process the discrete signals differently, like panning a vocal, like the lead vocal, if you've done that. If you do it too wide, it can sound a little unnatural, but just a little bit wider makes it sound a lot bigger. Triple tracking, quad tracking, and the like can also be pleasing. Going too far with the process can give you something that is very cool or something you absolutely hate. There are plugins and hardware effects that mimic double tracking, and some of them are pretty good. The Nylon acoustic string instrument sample library from Native Instruments that I played on a episode where I showed you how to play guitars on keyboards, that actually has a doubling effect, and I think I was probably using it there because I usually do, and it sounds really good, but some of them just don't sound too cool, but that one does. Number 8. Q value when using parametric EQ. The Q value adjusts the range of frequencies affected on either side of your primary selected frequency. A low Q value means you will affect a greater range of frequencies on either side of your selected primary frequency. A higher Q value will limit the range of the affected frequencies. When you select the maximum value for the Q, on most parametric equalizers, the result will be an exceptionally narrow band of affected frequencies. This is often called a notch filter. So to do that visually, and I'll set down the remote again. So let's say you select a frequency of 3000 for your parametric EQ. At a very low Q number, the affected area would fall under this kind of triangle. You know, it slopes away. So lower frequencies down here, higher frequencies up here. But as you adjust the cut or the boost, it's going to affect a lot of other frequencies. As you narrow the Q by increasing its value, you're affecting far fewer frequencies as a range on either side of your main frequency. Hopefully that'll make it clear to you. As an example, a notch filter can be used to eliminate a high-pitched click track that bled through on a bass guitar track. I had a friend that loved his cans to just be pumping into his ears. It made him do a better performance, I think. But that really made the click track very prominent, and you could get some bleed through even with closed headphones. And using a notch filter, you can take it out. Now, it's going to work really well in that situation because you got the bass frequencies down here and you have the click probably around about 5-6K if it's a nice bright click. And so it's easy to chop away this and not affect your bass. It's a little harder when it's it's right in the middle of some performance on an instrument that you want to keep. But usually if you notch it out, you'll be fine. Now, I bet you knew a lot of these terms. Perhaps you knew all of them. Hopefully there was something in here that was interesting. It's important not to assume that just because you know, everyone knows. At some time or another, we've spoken to someone and they nod like they understand, but then you end up with some adverse consequences because they'll say something like, oh, I thought you meant this, or I thought you meant that. Music is a language and we use a lot of terms, so it's really good to know what some of them mean. And here's 8 that I thought would be interesting to talk about. Never be embarrassed to ask. You'll know the next time. That's how I learned. Plus reading a lot of books, hanging around in studios, and just picking people's brains constantly when I was a lot younger. Take care, and I'll see you in another episode soon. Bye now.